There is something you have been meaning to do. Not something trivial, something real. A project, a decision, a conversation you have been carrying for days or weeks or longer than you want to admit. You know exactly what it is. You have thought about it more than once today, and yet here you are, doing something else. You checked your phone. You reorganized something that did not need reorganizing. You made the easier decision, started the smaller task, told yourself you would get to the real one after. And somehow, without deciding to, you spent another day not starting. You probably have a name for this. Lazy, undisciplined, someone who always means to, but never quite does. None of that is why this is happening. The reason you cannot start the thing you need to start is not a character flaw. It is not a failure of motivation. It is not something a better productivity system will fix. It is the output of a circuit that was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years to make exactly this decision, the decision you are making right now, and to make it reliably, automatically, and almost without your awareness. Your brain is not avoiding the task because it is broken. It is avoiding the task because it is working exactly as it was built to work. And here is the part that changes everything. The same system that makes you check your phone without meaning to is the same system that makes you not start. It is not two problems. It is one problem running on the same ancient hardware in two different directions. For most of human history, the future did not exist in any meaningful practical sense. This is not a metaphor. Your ancestors lived in small groups moving through unpredictable landscapes where everything that mattered was either available right now or it was not available at all. The animal you might hunt next week was not real. The shelter you might build next season was not something your nervous system could act on. What was real was the animal track in the mud today, the fruit that would rot by tomorrow, the stranger approaching from the east who was already here. Your nervous system was shaped in that world, not designed to ignore the future entirely, but hardwired to treat the present as categorically more urgent, more real, and more worth acting on than anything that exists only as a plan. So what happens when you are asked to work towards something that will only pay off in 3 weeks? Researchers call this temporal discounting. The further away a reward is in time, the less your brain actually values it, not metaphorically but neurologically. When neuroscientists show people choices between a reward now and a larger reward later, the immediate reward activates the limbic system, the older, faster, more visceral part of your brain, with an intensity the future reward simply cannot match. The future reward activates the prefrontal cortex, the part capable of abstract planning and long-range calculation. But the prefrontal cortex came late in evolution. It is powerful but slow. And in a conflict between the two, the limbic. George Ainslie, a behavioral economist who spent decades studying why humans persistently fail to act in their own long-term interest, described the precise shape of this discounting. It is hyperbolic, not linear. A reward 3 months away barely registers as real. The same reward 2 days away suddenly feels urgent. 1 day away, it feels critical. This is not inconsistency. This is your brain updating its calculation as a reward moves from abstract to actual, from future to present, from the stranger your nervous system cannot quite believe in to the thing that is finally, undeniably here. This is why deadlines work. Not because of the pressure itself. Because the deadline is what finally makes the task real enough for your ancient brain to treat it as something requiring action now. But what happens when the deadline is still far away? Or when there is no deadline at all? The task stays where it always was, and your brain stays exactly where it always was too. But temporal discounting is only half of what is happening when you sit down to begin and immediately find yourself not beginning. There is something more immediate at work. Fuschia Sirois, a psychologist at Durham University, has spent years studying the emotional architecture of procrastination. What she found changes the frame entirely. Procrastination, she argues, is not a time management problem. It is an emotion regulation problem. When you approach a task that matters, you almost never feel neutral. You feel the low-grade anxiety of not knowing whether you can do it well enough. You feel the friction of effort before any reward has arrived. You feel the discomfort of ambiguity, The threat of possible failure. The gap between where you are and where the task requires you to be. That discomfort is not small, and your brain does not treat it as small. The amygdala, the structure that has been scanning your environment for threats since long before your ancestors had language, responds to anticipated failure and unpleasant effort in the same direction. It responds to a predator. Not with the same intensity, but with the same fundamental logic. This thing is aversive, and moving away from it will produce relief. You do not procrastinate because you lack discipline. You procrastinate because beginning the task triggers a threat response, and your nervous system immediately starts looking for a way out. Can you guess what the way out looks like? Your phone is not a separate problem from procrastination. It is the exit your ancient brain has always been searching for, now engineered and placed in your hand at every moment of every day. A difficult task asks you to sustain attention on something uncertain, tolerate discomfort, and wait for a reward that has not arrived yet. Your phone offers the exact opposite: instant novelty, immediate feedback, and the dopamine hit of anticipation before you even know what the notification says. This is the connection. The same dopamine system that drives you to check the phone again without meaning to is the same system that cannot feel the reward of the task until the task is nearly done. Both behaviors come from the same place. Both are your brain doing exactly what it learned to do. In the ancestral world, escaping the discomfort of difficult mental work had natural limits. There was no bottomless feed. The alternative to hard thinking was rest, movement, or the people immediately around you, all of which ended, all of which returned you eventually to the task. There was a ceiling on avoidance. Now the ceiling is gone. Robert Sapolsky, who has spent his career studying how stress shapes behavior across species, has pointed out something that makes this worse. Humans are uniquely capable of generating a full stress response about something that has not happened yet and may never happen. You do not need to be in danger to feel threatened. You need only think about the task, the project, the conversation, the thing you have been putting off. The thought alone is enough to start the alarm. Your body responds to the imagined future, the same way your ancestors' bodies responded to actual danger. And then your hand moves toward the phone before you have consciously decided anything. Piers Steel, a psychologist at the University of Calgary who spent years analyzing every major study on procrastination, distilled the pattern into something he called the procrastination equation. It tracks how your brain decides whether to engage with a task now or not, how confident you feel about succeeding, how much you actually value the outcome, how impulsive you are in this moment. But the dominant variable, the one that overwhelms all the others, is delay, how far away the reward is. That single factor, more than difficulty, more than complexity, more than your mood, determines whether your brain treats the task. Your ancestors who acted on immediate rewards and treated distant plans with skepticism survived at higher rates than those who invested in futures that might never arrive. The preference for the present was not a weakness the species eventually outgrew. It was a feature selected in over hundreds of thousands of years. You inherited it completely. There is one more piece, and it may be the most unsettling. Hal Hershfield, a psychologist at UCLA, used brain imaging to study how people think about their future selves. What he found was this: when people imagine the person they will be in 10 years, their brain activity looks more like thinking about a stranger than thinking about themselves. The future version of you is not fully real to your nervous system. It is someone you feel mild concern for but cannot fully inhabit. Someone else's problem, in the most literal neurological sense. Think about what that means for the task you have been avoiding. The person who will benefit from you starting today, who will feel relief, who will be grateful you did not wait, that person is a stranger to the part of your brain that has to make the decision right now. And the person who has to sit with the discomfort of beginning is you, in this moment, in a body that has never fully believed the stranger is worth the cost. This is not selfishness. It is the output of a nervous system that evolved for a world where only the present self needed to act, suffer, or survive. The future self had no operational reality. Understanding all of this does not make starting easy. It does not dissolve the resistance. It does not silence the part of your brain that notices the discomfort of the first step and immediately produces an alternative. That circuit is older than language, older than agriculture, older than the concept of a deadline. But something shifts when you understand what you are actually up against. You are not fighting a character flaw. You are not broken in a way that a better system will fix. You are not the kind of person who cannot begin. You are a present tense animal in a future tense world. A nervous system built to act on the immediate, now being asked to sustain effort toward outcomes that will only arrive later, in a body that has never fully believed in later, beginning work that triggers a threat response before you have opened the document or written the first sentence or made the first call. The same ancient machinery. The same unresolved tension between what your brain was built to do and the world it is now being asked to operate in. There is something you have been meaning to do. Your brain is not avoiding it because it cannot handle it. Your brain is avoiding it because it is doing exactly what kept your ancestors alive, acting on the present, escaping the uncomfortable. Treating the future self as someone not quite real enough to be worth this much discomfort right now. The task is still there. It always was going to be. If this changed how you see it, the two videos before this one complete the picture. The first is called, What If We Are Still Living in the Stone Age? It builds the foundation, why you are running ancient hardware in a modern world. The second is called, Why You Can't Stop Checking Your Phone. Same circuit, different trap. All three connect. Links are in the description. Subscribe if you want to understand the machinery, not the symptoms. The machinery.